So essentially what it is right now there's an order outstanding that basically all the debris and metals from any part of a fire had to be removed by the end of the month. The order basically states that the foundation, it's not saying that it has to be removed. You have time to remove the foundation, to be honest. By June 17th next year, you will not have that option, but you do have the option of leaving the foundation at present. However, according to line B of the order, you must secure the site in a manner that is acceptable to the Safety Codes officer and in accordance with the Alberta Building Code. What that means is that you cannot leave the foundation and the hole unattended and open to any person from the public being able to access that. That means then that you will need to provide a fence around that and secure that. And then you will essentially be meeting the obligations under the Safety Codes Act to protect that property from any kind of accidental situation that could occur with the public or children or people around the site. Now,
are you saying for the secure position of the fencing that we've been using up until now, the metal fencing, are you saying that we have to provide G4 security people for it?
Well, my understanding is that at some point in the near future, the fencing that has been provided by the municipality, am I going in the right direction here? That fencing is not going to be remaining in place forever, right? At some point you will...
My question though is that fencing or its equivalent satisfactory?
Yeah, so a 6-foot steel construction fence around the site that is secure and maintained is adequate protection according to the Safety Codes Act to protect that excavation from public access.
Your further comment was the security of that.
The security of it means that you need to maintain it and ensure, I would say on a daily basis, to ensure that that fence remains intact. It's been properly secured and wired and put together, has adequate bracing, it's being maintained and not falling over, etc. It's protecting individuals of the public that could wander onto the site and be harmed by either falling in the hole or should the hole accumulate with moisture, water, potentially drowned. What we don't want is 500 dugouts around here. We know we even had a tragedy just last year, I believe. Some kids are just wandering on some ice, fell through and drowned. So it's very important that we are maintaining that safely and securely. Okay?
Or the other option is the backfill.
Now the other option, and so let me point this out. Here's the thing. If you leave your foundation open, what is going to happen, and may have already been happening, is it's going to accumulate with water. And as that water gets into the soil and soaks and saturates, winter is going to come, and as the ground freezes, we typically get between 2 and 3 meters of frost. We're talking 6 and 9 feet of frost. If you don't backfill and the ground freezes down to the bottom, first of all, you may be waiting till next June or July before all that comes out of the ground and you can actually build, because you can't construct on top of frozen ground. Secondly, as that water soaks in there, it will, as it freezes, it expands, right? Ice, water expands about 10%. If I have 6 feet or 5 feet of frost in there, 10% of that is 6 inches. If my soil expands 6 inches from freezing, from being saturated, and then when the frost finally does come out of the ground, that soil is entirely compromised. You can't put a foundation back on that. So then your next option is, if you're going to build on that, is you're going to have to hire a geotechnical engineer. That person is going to first of all have to assess, did all the frost come out of the ground? The next thing they're going to have to do is, what is the bearing capacity of that soil after it's become frozen mud, expanded, and settled again? You're not going to be able to build on that. After that, you'll basically be looking at getting a geotechnical engineer to come out, do a site investigation, possibly remove all that soil, and then either build your foundation an extra 6 feet deep, or perhaps you may have to replace that soil, in which case that would have to be done under the supervision of a geotechnical engineer, and that typically involves placing the soil back in 1 foot lifts and compacting to whatever 95, 98% Proctor under the supervision of the geotechnical engineer to get it to the height where you can actually put a foundation on it again. That still does not take into account that the entire rest of the foundation may have also been compromised, or which may have, say, a non-structural basement slab sitting on it, but you still may be looking at an issue where who knows like what kind of issues you could have long term. You're still going to have column pads and other structural supports in the middle of that floor that are also going to be compromised, and you're going to be possibly bringing in an excavator, getting that down. It's a lot of potential risk. Now, soil conditions vary across the municipality and even within a subdivision. So we're not telling you what you have to do, but we are advising you that, as I did today, that you consult with a geotechnical consultant, go look at the soil conditions on your site. If maybe you've got soil conditions that are like 100% gravel, granular, pit run, something that's very free draining and everything else. Your consultant may tell you, oh, well, this particular site may be okay. I haven't seen that very much. My experience in the municipality is that there's very little of that. So there's a significant risk to anybody leaving the foundation open for the winter. I would certainly not, that would not be my advice whatsoever. But if you're struggling with that, I realize there's some cost implications to come in and fill and remove. The advantage with that is you probably have some certainty, right? On the tail end, if you don't do that, you say, well, I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to see what I'm going to have and what it's going to cost to remediate those soil conditions. I would say definitely don't do that without consulting a geotechnical engineer who comes out and looks at your site. Because certainly there could be problems. We've heard of other problems in other places where the holes have been abandoned. It's not like you roll up to a house on a brand new subdivision, you excavate, a week later you throw a footing in, and a week after that you're backfilling and you're all covered up and everything's good. That is not the kind of situation we're in, and so people are advised to just weigh this carefully. Is that a... Yeah, go ahead.
So, before you be issued a building permit, you need a geotechnical engineer to go in and confirm that conditions are okay.
So the question was, do you need a geotechnical engineer to go in and look at your site prior to submitting a building permit? And the answer is no. We require a geotechnical person to assess the bottom of the excavation where the footing is going prior to pouring the footing. Now, when you apply for your building permit, you may or may not have the hole completely excavated and available for that person to look at. We're concerned that that geotechnical person looks at that excavation at the time when you're about to pour the footing, because that's the critical part. We need to see that the bearing capacity is there, that it's dry, it's not sloughed in, that they didn't over-excavate when they're removing footings and somebody just pushed some fill in. So they're going to check that and make sure that that foundation at exactly the time you're pouring your footing is good to go. If we were to ask you to do that ahead of time, there really wouldn't be anything. It would just delay things, okay?
Have you been feeling or understanding what kind of cost that would be for a geotechnical engineer?
I wouldn't venture that. Let me just complete the process for you, for everyone else. So what happens is that when you call for your foundation inspection, at that time you provide a copy of your geotechnical, your bearing certificate. And then our inspectors get the bearing certificate, we look at that, and we go out and we look at your foundation, and we just confirm that, there's nothing on that letter that you got from the engineer that required any particular design. There were some special conditions on there that were really needed to be complied with the building. So that's when we'll do that inspection, confirm that, and take that record. Cost. I've spoken with so there's 4 firms. I haven't heard anybody else, but I'll tell you what the 4 firms are. So in the municipality, every single one of them are available. They're out there doing it now. If there's other firms out there, I'm not aware of any, but these are the 4 that are in the municipality. I don't recommend a particular one. I have no idea what they charge. I can't attest to what their particular, how they work with customers or everything else. They all know the process that basically from the time you do that footing and they come and look, Generally speaking, there's not a delay. What happens is he'll tell the contractor that, yeah, it looks good. So if he tells you it looks good, then the contractor will proceed to pour the footings, get the wall in place, do the dam proofing, and get it ready for inspection. So that gives them about a week to 10 days to generate that report. And we've had no problem with people being able to provide that certificate at the time of inspection. No problem at all. So there's 4 firms in town. There's AGN Geotechnique, Terracon Geotechnique, Thurber Engineering, and Parkland Geotechnical. All 4 of them are local. All 4 of them, I've spoken with all of them. All of them are engaged in the process. Okay?
This is only if they leave for next spring.
No, this is now.
So even now.
Even now, absolutely, absolutely, yes. Because I've driven through Abasand and what I see is a lot of holes full of water. Okay, we know that when they're excavating, they're removing those footings. It's not exactly the same as when you build a brand new house and you scrape it out nice and clean. We're talking Abasand, Beacon Hill, Draper, Waterways. Most of those places we either have very little or no geotechnical data whatsoever on them because they're very, very old. So, and a lot of times, like if you're talking Sapri, you've got high water table. Waterways, soil conditions are very variable. Again, Beacon Hill and Abasand, again, somewhat variable. It's not like in, say, Stone Creek where they went in and they remove everything, engineered fill, it's compacted, good to go. We know what's there. So to that, I would say that what those geotechnical persons do is going to be, the level of investigation they do is going to vary. So in some places, a person may be able to go in and look at the ground, and they may be able to do some fairly easily done testing to confirm bearing capacity. Looking at the bearing on the surface does not necessarily tell you about the water table or what the soil conditions are underneath. So those geotechnical people may need to do additional things like a borehole in the bottom of your excavation, or if you've got a hoe, they may take and do some extra digging near the site or something like that to get a better feel. So they will need to do whatever they need to do in order to ensure that when we put foundations back in these holes, that we don't have problems for years to come, right? And the builders, they're looking at 10-year structural warranties under new home warranty. So this is, it's important. It's important. The last thing we want to do is build a bunch of stuff and have it settling unevenly, breaking, and giving you problems down the road.
Okay.